we begin this hour with the war inside the Democratic Party. There's new data points in this battle between the establishment and the insurgent progressives. An outside group plans to spend $15 million between now and November to keep the far left on the outside looking in. Democrats see 2026 as this opportunity in line with history. Is an unpopular president, an unpopular party in power, steering an unpopular war. It should present a chance to retake both houses of Congress. But the party's moderate center worries that its progressive flank will stumble at the ballot box with Americans. The left sees its rise as proof that voters are in the mood for some change and a whole overhaul of the party. They believe that it gets a failed grade on delivering its core promises. Back in the news center this afternoon is NewsNation political contributor Denise Gitsham and Bardella, publisher of the Watchdog Report on Substack and co-host of the Party Lines podcast. All right, Kirk, let's start with you in that big race in Michigan. You've got now the Democratic Senate nominee, Abdul El-Sayed. He won, but he won by less than 1 point, prompting some questions about how the progressive side of this party might fare come general election. The Bulwark publishing an analysis suggesting that the national environment still favors this blue wave, which could help El-Sayed overcome concerns about his more progressive views. How do you see it? I know we're just, 24, 48 hours or so outside of this Michigan race, but we're 90 days away from the midterms.
Yeah, midterms are about which side can get their most ardent supporters to turn out and show up. We oftentimes see a decline in turnout in midterm elections. It's the reason why that every time Donald Trump hasn't been on the ballot, Republican support has kind of gone down and Democrats have overperformed. If I am the Democrats, I would much rather have a problem with the middle than my base. You have to have your base show up. We saw back in 2016 what happens when the Democratic Party base is disenchanted with their nominee. They don't show up. They don't turn out. That's part of the reason why Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 to Donald Trump in the first place, because the Bernie wing decided to stay home that day. So I would much rather not have that problem if I'm in Michigan, if I'm Syed. Like, you got your base, you got your most ardent people. They're going to knock on doors, that are motivated, that will turn out and show up. That's a good place to start in the kind of contested election we're going to have.
Denise, let's talk AIPAC, because it has a strong history of how much it spends and that spend usually playing out for the nominees that they're behind. But that didn't happen here. I mean, they spent more than $30 million trying to defeat El-Sayed in this Michigan Senate primary. The New York Times is reporting the organization now may be supporting Republican Mike Rogers in the general election. How significant would that be? And how do you expect the AIPAC issue to just more broadly impact the general election? It didn't work for Stevens. Could it work for Rogers?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that AIPAC is supporting, it's like news that AIPAC is supporting a Republican. Increasingly, that's going to be so. It's funny because when I ran for Congress against a Democrat, they supported the Democrat. And that was just par for the course. That's what AIPAC did back in, 10 years ago. So things have changed mightily. And maybe that's because of what Kurt was saying earlier about getting out your base. If the base that support that is the one that's going to get El-Sayed, over the finish line is the DSA base, well, AIPAC has a lot of work to do, right? Because their only mission is to help maintain bipartisan support for Israel. And generally, they've done that by supporting Democrats. And now they have to really rethink who's actually for them. And I see the echoes of that question rolling through the minds of so many of my Jewish Democrat friends. They're saying, where do I belong? I don't feel like I have a home anymore in this party. You've seen Senator Fetterman say the same thing. The Democratic Party has completely turned its back on Israel. I mean, if you just look at what happened when they passed the resolution, or they voted against the resolution for the U.S. to support Israel, right? It was 108 Democrats that voted against it. It was more than the ones that voted for it. So Jewish voters in AIPAC are getting the message loud and clear, and that's that they are no longer welcome in the Democratic Party. So where are they going to go? They're going to come home to roost with the Republicans, and I welcome them with open arms.
Well, let's talk about the Republican Party, Denise, and maybe some possible shifts and changes there, because Tucker Carlson ruled out plans to run for president in 2028 earlier this summer, but he took a new step toward trying to build, I can see your comment on that, but he took a new step toward trying to build a new party movement yesterday, unveiling this 10-point vision for America. How influential could a Tucker Carlson-led political party be for 2028? And that might be too tight of a timeline, but maybe beyond.
Well, hopefully my laugh gave the answer to that question away. I mean, he and Nick Fuentes can go hang out on an island with Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly, and our whole world would be better off for it. These are people who represent extreme views that are racist, that are unbelievably un-American, and that speak to, like, I just don't even know, like, he's so out of touch with reality. Tucker Carlson doesn't belong in the Republican Party. We should have kicked him out before he left. He doesn't belong. None of them do. That whole faction of the far right wing does not have a place in the Republican Party that I call my home and that I helped build. So I'm glad he's gone.
Rewind 5-6 years ago, they were beloved within the party. What's the shift?
Yeah, they've changed. I mean, they've changed. Look at their rhetoric. It's completely different. They are insane. I don't have any Republicans that follow Tucker Carlson. I wouldn't want to be friends with someone who followed Tucker Carlson. These people don't belong in the mainstream. They don't belong. They should not have a voice or a platform in my party, and now they don't.
Kurt, weigh in here. What's your thoughts on Tucker Carlson and trying to usher in a new wing of the Republican Party?
I mean, it's quite an interesting, I guess, evolution to go from one of the prominent voices within the party that, you know, at one point in time, the top-rated cable news host and the entire game, to now contemplating forming his own political party to lead, surrounded by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the original MAGA congresswoman. When you're too extreme for even Donald Trump's Republican Party, that says a lot. And again, I think Denise is right that these people are just not going to gain any traction with any side. And I think that's part of the issue that we're seeing with both Democrats and Republicans is there's a lot of people who just feel disenfranchised and disenchanted with either establishment party. They think that they have been left behind. They think that people are looking out more for special corporate interests than themselves. You know, this like AIPAC. AIPAC right now, the fact that they're going to go and support some Republicans, mind you, Republicans are also saying, and they campaigned on this in 24, no more endless wars, no more Middle East wars, stop cutting blank checks to people. So I'm not sure AIPAC's going to find a home in either party at this point, and I think the American people would rather those dollars be spent here at home than anywhere else.
Let's stick back at home. And Kurt, let me ask you this, shifting gears. ICE has recently ramped up immigration arrests at airports around the country, targeting people with expired visa. The new Wall Street Journal report shows that airlines are now starting to push back. We were talking about this with Nancy Liu a little while ago, citing one instance where Southwest prevented an ICE officer from boarding a plane in Dallas to make an arrest. What do you make of this?
You know, I get that enforcement and immigration enforcement is really popular amongst the Republican Party base, but I think that once you start doing things in broad public, like I'm trying to imagine, you know, I live in Dallas, so I know what airport at Love Field they're talking about. And if I were boarding a flight with my family and my kids to go wherever, I don't know that I'd want them seeing that type of action being taken and have that would provoke some really, you know, uncomfortable conversations, I think. And if you're going to do law enforcement, fine, but I got to airport. I don't think that's the way to go. I think that puts it front and center in a way that will backfire in a public relations way, because no family that's boarding their plane to go wherever they're going wants to have to explain to their kids why they're seeing children separated from parents and that type of intensity. It's not really an appropriate environment, in my opinion, for kids to be exposed to.
Denise, to that point, there are videos that have been surfacing all over social media. I'm sure you've seen some of them showing ICE officers trying to make arrests in airports. They have gone viral over the last couple of weeks. Should the administration be more concerned about putting immigration enforcement, you know, back into the public view and focusing on those worst of the worst, right? That's what they campaigned on, and they've lost some momentum on their credibility when it comes to immigration enforcement because some of these viral videos that don't seem to match with that messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kurt's point is very well taken, and we're both PR people. We both think about how do you win, right? How do you galvanize people behind your cause? And sometimes how you do it has to be, you have to take a consideration of what the form looks like, not just the substance, because I 100% believe that if you are violating, you know, American law, if you're breaking American law, which is, to be clear, that's what's happening when they arrest these people, then you should be held accountable no matter whether you're in an airport or in a school or anywhere else. But does that look like the kind of enforcement that Americans can stomach? Is that something that we want our children to see, to Kurt's point? I don't think it is. And I think that Republicans have to be a lot smarter about how they speak about people who are here that are trying to become American but not doing it in a legal way. They need to be smarter and more compassionate in their tone. Look, I worked for President George W. Bush. We believed in compassionate conservatism. Yeah, compassionate conservatism. And I did Hispanic outreach for the president, and I know how that polled with Hispanics, because it showed that even though we stood for the law, we loved people and we considered their feelings. We considered the fact that they were coming here to experience the American dream, and the fact that they did it in an illegal way is a real problem for someone like me who's a immigration hardliner. But I also understand that there's a human element to it, and we have to learn how to balance that much better in the Republican Party.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. President Trump now in the Oval Office looking to sign an executive order. Let's listen in.
Properly supported and protected from overseas dumping and offshore threats. Howard can speak more to the details, but polysilicon is incredibly important in